The rain had been falling for hours. Not the loud kind of storm that shakes windows or rattles rooftops. This rain was softer, slower, almost thoughtful. It painted the streets of Portland in silver reflections and blurred the city lights into glowing streaks of gold and white. From the outside, Emily Carter's home looked peaceful, untouched by the world beyond it. Inside, silence lived comfortably in every room. Before we begin tonight's story, take one small moment to support the channel. If stories about love, family, heartbreak, and unexpected second chances mean something to you, then you're exactly where you belong. Subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications because tonight's story isn't just emotional. It's the kind of story that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. Because sometimes, the smallest message can reopen a part of the heart we thought was gone forever. And sometimes, the people who love us most are the ones who quietly remind us that life is not over yet. Emily stood alone in her kitchen, drying the final plate from dinner with slow, practiced movements. The warm yellow light above the sink cast soft shadows across the room while steam still lingered faintly from the soup she had made earlier that evening. Tomato basil. Simple. Predictable. Comforting. That described almost every part of her life now. At 46 years old, Emily had become someone who depended on routine the way other people depended on noise. Her mornings began at 6:30. Coffee in the blue ceramic mug her husband once bought her during a trip to Seattle. A quick shower. A quiet drive to the bookstore downtown. Shelving books. Helping customers. Recommending novels she secretly wished she had written herself. Then home again. Dinner alone most nights. A chapter or two from a book. Bed before 11. Repeat. Some people would have called her life lonely. Emily preferred the word peaceful. Lonely sounded painful. Peaceful sounded intentional. And after everything life had taken from her, intentional peace mattered. The kitchen clock ticked softly above the refrigerator. 8:47 p.m. Outside, headlights drifted past rain-covered windows like distant ghosts. The weather report had warned about storms all evening, but Emily hadn't really listened. Storms didn't bother her anymore. Loss changed what frightened you. Her fingers paused slightly as she placed the dish carefully into the cabinet. For a moment, she stared at the empty kitchen table across the room. 4 chairs. Only one used regularly. There had been a time when this house felt alive. A time when laughter bounced off these walls. When music played during dinner. When someone always forgot to turn off the hallway light. Back then, silence barely existed here. Now silence was practically furniture. Emily exhaled slowly and reached for the dish towel hanging beside the sink. That was when her phone vibrated. A small sound, barely noticeable. But in a quiet house, even tiny interruptions felt loud. Her eyes shifted toward the marble countertop where her phone rested beside a half-finished cup of tea. The screen glowed softly against the darkness. One new message. From Liam. Instantly, something tightened in her chest. Her son rarely texted late at night unless something mattered. Emily wiped her hands quickly and picked up the phone. The message was short. Too short. Mom, I need to tell you something tonight. Please don't panic before I explain. Emily stared at the words. Once. Then again. Her heartbeat slowed for half a second before speeding up twice as fast. 1,000 terrible possibilities rushed into her mind all at once. Was he hurt? Was he sick? Did something happen at work? Was he in trouble? Was someone else hurt? That was the curse of motherhood. No matter how old your child became, your mind still prepared for disaster first. Emily typed quickly. Liam, what happened? Are you okay? She pressed send immediately. The typing dots appeared. Then disappeared. Appeared again. Gone. Nothing. Emily frowned. That's not funny, she whispered quietly to herself. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the windows in uneven rhythms. She waited another 30 seconds. Still nothing. A strange uneasiness crept into the room. Emily placed the phone down carefully and wrapped her arms around herself. She hated this feeling. The uncertainty. The waiting. Especially after the last few years. Ever since her husband Mark passed away 4 years earlier. Uncertainty had become something she feared more than almost anything else. Because one phone call had already changed her life once. She still remembered that night perfectly. The hospital hallway. The pale fluorescent lights. The doctor removing his glasses before speaking. People always removed their glasses before delivering terrible news. Emily swallowed hard and pushed the memory away before it could fully surface. No, not tonight. She moved toward the kettle near the stove and filled it with water. Ugh. Tea helped. Tea gave your hands something to hold while your thoughts tried to tear you apart. Within minutes, steam curled softly into the air. Emily prepared chamomile with honey, just like she always did when anxiety started creeping into her chest. The warmth steadied her slightly. She carried the mug toward the living room and sat beside the window overlooking the rain-soaked street. The house creaked softly around her. Old homes always sounded alive at night, especially empty ones. Her eyes drifted toward the bookshelf across the room. Framed photographs lined the shelves between novels and candles. Mark smiling beside a lake during a camping trip. Liam at 16 holding his first guitar. A family Christmas photo taken years before illness entered their lives. Emily looked away quickly. Some memories comforted you. Others reopened wounds you spent years learning how to carry. Her phone remained silent on the coffee table. She checked it again. Nothing. Come on, Liam. She hated how nervous she sounded. Liam had always been careful with her feelings after Mark died. Maybe too careful sometimes. He checked in constantly. Called every Sunday. Brought groceries when she insisted she didn't need help. Sometimes Emily wondered when exactly her son had stopped being a child and quietly become the person taking care of her instead. That realization hurt more than she ever admitted out loud. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room. A second later came thunder, low and distant. Emily took another sip of tea. Her thoughts wandered despite herself. Maybe Liam was moving away. The possibility hit her harder than expected. He was 24 now. Smart. Kind. Ambitious in quiet ways. Of course his life would eventually pull him somewhere else. That's what children were supposed to do. Still, the thought of this house becoming even quieter made her chest ache. And then, without warning, another thought surfaced. Daniel Harper. Emily closed her eyes briefly. She hadn't meant to think about him. Especially not tonight. But lately, thoughts of him arrived more often than she wanted to admit. Daniel had first walked into the bookstore 6 months earlier during a rainy afternoon, surprisingly similar to this one. At first, he seemed like every other customer. Middle-aged. Polite. Quiet. But there was something different about the way he moved through the bookstore. He didn't rush. Didn't stare at his phone every few seconds. Didn't treat books like decorations. He actually touched them carefully. Read the back covers. Paused at certain lines. As if stories still mattered deeply to him. Emily noticed people like that. One afternoon, he approached the counter carrying an old poetry collection. "Can I ask you something?" he'd said. Emily looked up politely. "Of course." Daniel held up the book slightly. "Do people still read poetry seriously anymore?" Emily smiled faintly. "The right people do." Something changed in his expression then. Not surprise exactly. Recognition. Their conversation lasted 20 minutes. The next week he returned. Then again after that. Eventually, their conversations became part of Emily's routine. Books. Music. Childhood memories. The strange loneliness that exists even in crowded cities. Daniel listened differently than most people. Most people listened while waiting to speak. Daniel listened to understand. And after years of grief and emotional exhaustion, being understood felt dangerously comforting. Emily remembered one particular evening near closing time. The bookstore had been nearly empty. Rain tapped softly against the windows while she organized returned novels behind the counter. Daniel lingered near the entrance holding a book in both hands, like he was trying to gather courage. Finally, he walked toward her. "Emily." Something in his voice made her look up immediately. "Yes." He hesitated, then smiled nervously. "I was wondering if maybe you'd like to get coffee sometime." Her heart had betrayed her instantly, because for one reckless second, she wanted to say yes. Not eventually. Not maybe. Yes. But fear arrived faster. Fear always arrived faster. Fear reminded her how painful love could become. How devastating attachment could be. How rebuilding your heart at 46 felt far more terrifying than it did at 20. So instead, Emily smiled gently and lowered her eyes. My life's a little complicated these days. Daniel nodded slowly. Respectful. Kind. But disappointment still flickered briefly across his face before he hid it. Understood, he said softly. He never asked again. And somehow, that almost hurt more. Emily opened her eyes and stared into her tea. Rain slid slowly down the window beside her. Maybe she had made the right choice. Maybe protecting herself was smarter. Safe. Safe was good. Safe meant surviving. But lately, safe had started feeling strangely similar to empty. Her phone suddenly rang. Emily jumped so hard she nearly spilled tea across the couch. Liam. She grabbed the phone immediately. Liam. For a moment, only static and Rain answered. Then finally, Mom. His voice sounded nervous. Very nervous. And suddenly Emily knew. Whatever he was about to say, their lives were about to change forever.